Okay, so today we're going to do a little podcast on body image and specifically body dysmorphia in bodybuilders. So I brought in my husband today. The both of us are like very into fitness. We've been lifting for quite a while. So Ryan, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us, how long you've been into lifting and all that.
All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Ryan. Uh, I am Angie's husband. I've been into lifting pretty seriously for the past 3 or 4 years now. I create my own plans and everything, and I help other people create their own plans. I'm very big into nutrition as well, and I constantly research new things about bodybuilding and lifting just to kind of help others and myself out.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about the types of training you do and have done, like including, the sports you grew up on, all that?
I'm pretty big into powerlifting, like the three main lifts. I definitely used to be more into like functional fitness regarding like athleticism. I used to play a lot of sports in high school, like basketball, baseball. I ran cross country and track. I still play basketball and baseball on like adult leagues, and I'll still run 5 and 10Ks quite often whenever I can. So it's more than just lifting the lift. I still try to apply whatever I can into my daily life as well.
Perfect. So personally, I've been into lifting and bodybuilding for almost 2 years, a little over 2 years, but I was an athlete my whole life. I grew up on gymnastics. That was my big sport all throughout my childhood. Um, I won a world championship when I was 14 years old. So I was like super serious about it, super into it. And then, I got into high school. I did diving, I did track, I did throwing. So that was kind of my first introduction into weightlifting was we do uh days in the in the gym for training for oh my goodness, so for throwing. So that was kind of my introduction. And then I joined the army. I went away for, basic training for 5 months. Ryan's in the army as well. We're both military police. And when I came home, my brothers, I should say, helped me get into lifting and fitness. So that was kind of my introduction to it all. So I just want to talk a bit about some personal experiences with body image and body dysmorphia. But first, I want to define what body image and like body dysmorphia and muscle dysmorphia is from a medical standpoint. And this comes from the Olivardia, Blassel, and Hoffman source. So, muscle dysmorphia and body dysmorphia is described as an individual having a distorted view of their body and muscle composition, frequently believing that they are too small when they are objectively buff, and involves a lot of comparison with others and a bit of an obsession with one's physique. So I think this definitely categorizes or characterizes a lot of people who are super into bodybuilding, super into lifting. I feel like a lot of us struggle with that. And they say that comparison is a thief of joy. And I think that is definitely a big issue that especially people who are profiting off of their physical appearance struggle with. So, Ryan, I don't know if you want to talk about some of your personal experiences with muscle dysmorphia or body dysmorphia and how that's affected you.
Oh, yeah. So growing up my whole life, um, I guess I had like a more ectomorph type body style where I'm a super hard gainer and I was really skinny. All throughout high school, I was in the one teens up until like the 120 pound range. And at that time, like I never lifted. It was just more like sports that I was doing. And honestly, like that's the biggest that I thought I was. Like I thought I was pretty muscular. Um, and then once I joined the military, we have a lot of standards, and it was to the point where I almost had to get put onto double rations because I was so small and I didn't even realize it. So I started getting into lifting then, nothing crazy. I didn't really blow up too big. I mean, I gained a little bit of weight. I got up into like the 130s, 140s. Um, but then when I went to Afghanistan on my first deployment, I I started getting really into fitness as like a coping mechanism. And when I got home from Afghanistan, I continued on with that and I became even more disciplined. Then I blew up about 40 pounds and got up to 185. And to me, I don't see myself as like any bigger. I actually see myself as smaller. And it's kind of a daily struggle of looking in the mirror and like picking apart my body, thinking like what I need to do better, how I need to eat better, what I need to do to look as best as I can, or like try and get bigger in any way. And it's kind of a mental struggle because society really pushes for men to have a specific image. And if you don't look that way, then you get scrutinized. And it's all these outside factors play a huge role into your internal factor. And it's just internal turmoil that constantly repeats itself. And it's very frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I personally struggled with it a little bit, and I was kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum where I didn't think I was too small, or sometimes I do. It really it fluctuates, but sometimes I'll be like, oh my gosh, like I'm not putting on as much muscle as I should, or I'm looking really small. And then there's other days I'm like, I've gained so much weight, my body fat percentage is up way too high. And in all reality, it's really not. It's just something that you struggle with when you hyperanalyze yourself all the time because you feel those pressures from everyone else on the outside. I know Coach Greg Doucette, who is a former bodybuilding competitor, super big in the Mr. Olympia realm of things, which is like the highest bodybuilding competition you could do, pretty much. Had posted a video discussing how chasing his aesthetics gave him body dysmorphia. So a lot of those, professional bodybuilders, their entire career is based off of the way that they look. And in turn, this kind of builds a super negative headspace for them because they're constantly trying to be better, look better. And the next year they have to, they might win and then they'll come back and the next year, like, oh, I have to put in so much work and do all this to make myself look even better than I did last year. And they're constantly comparing themselves with their competitors. It's a huge mind game. And he's also talked about, kind of some of the ways that people in the bodybuilding industry play into that. Specifically Arnold Schwarzenegger, I know, did this. He says he suspects Chris Bumstead does the same thing, who are two like super huge names in bodybuilding. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger, like everyone knows who he is, but they would post or like, put up paparazzi pictures from, weeks before or like even months before the competition, like a week or so before, so that their competitors, or like, even a couple weeks when it really gets in that grind time where you really have to put in all the work and make sure that you're, looking your absolute best. They push out images of themselves from months prior to kind of get in their competition's head and make them think that they weren't at the level that they were at. So in hopes that their competitors would slacken up a little bit and be like, okay, like I don't have to push myself as hard. So it's definitely a huge part of that sport is playing into, body dysmorphia and even using it against other people, which is crazy. I mean, there's also been studies that have shown that this is from the Hasenblas and Simmons Downs from 2010 article, which discusses how athletes who gauge success more on accomplishments rather than appearances tend to be more content with their body image. And I know, Ryan, you did baseball. Is that something that you experienced when you were in baseball? Like you felt better about yourself then than you did, once you got into bodybuilding?
Yeah. it just goes back to the functional fitness thing of okay, like bodybuilding is one thing, but a lot of people just leave it at that
Mhm.
compared to like if I play any type of sport or like I get into any type of competition, then it's like, okay, I'm using my fitness for like daily life activities or like competition so I can like push myself even more and get a better result.
Right. So I think a lot of the times once you're using your body more for what it can do rather than what it looks like, you'll have a more positive body image because you're more proud of the accomplishments that you're doing rather than being so hyper focused and hyper analyzing the way that you look, the way that you appear physically on the outside. I know when I was a gymnast, I think my body image was probably a little bit better, but being a gymnast is a unique sport in the sense that I didn't look like a gymnast, if that makes sense. I was super short, but I had, more body fat than some of the other girls. And I was always a little bit bulkier. Like that's just my body type is I always had a little bit more muscle than everyone else. Just also, just the way that I was raised and how my life was outside of training. Cause gymnastics was my life. Obviously I won a world championship. Like I was there at that gym all the time. But then I'd go home and I'd do, like I grew up in the woods, hunting, playing in the woods with my brothers, like hauling wood back and forth. Like so, a lot of my life depended on my strength, even, just at home, just to get by. So I think that definitely contributed to that. But there was definitely a lot of pressure in that atmosphere to really push myself to look a certain way or, people would make comments, but to me it didn't matter as much then because they'd say, oh, you don't look like a gymnast, but I was winning every competition I went to. You know what I'm saying? So I think that definitely
Yeah,
like your achievements kind of speak for themselves in that aspect. But in the realm of bodybuilding, I think it's so different because it's so specific to your appearances. And you could push crazy weight and all that, but I think part of you is still going to be hyper analyzing just straight down to the way you look rather than what you can, what your body can do.
yeah, exactly.
How would you say that the military influenced your body image? Like, with the height and weight standards and all of that.
Um, it honestly made it worse just because there's such strict standards on how we have to look and how I like analyze myself now. Because everybody, when they think of like a soldier or a marine, you just think of this really jacked, buff guy who's like going to save the world, and then you have to fit into that mold. And to me, um, after gaining like so much weight and learning a lot through lifting, I actually am too heavy for the Army standards now. Um, so I have to get taped, and it's crazy because my waistline is 30 inches and I have abs, but I'm considered overweight because of my height. And I'm only 5'9", 5'10", and there's other people who are taller than me at the same weight, but don't get taped. So it's really tough a lot of the times because now it's like, okay, there's something wrong with me because I'm not meeting a specific standard that the military needs, even though in reality, I'm probably one of the better, most in shape people. Like I'm probably in like the top 5% of like athletic ability and like powerlifting ability among like the majority of my peers. So it's like a love and hate relationship because everybody wants advice from you, but then all of a sudden you're deemed below standard just because you enjoy lifting, and now it just adds to the look and the image of yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, I know for me, when I was joining the army, I was found out I was going to our, medical processing on a Monday, and I was probably like 143, between like 143, 145 pounds, somewhere around that at that range. And my recruiter told me, all right, like you're going to MEPS, which is our medical processing. He said, you're going to MEPS on Friday, but you need to be 137 pounds by Friday. And I was so taken aback by that. And because I obviously this is something that I really, really wanted to do. I just didn't know how I was going to make it happen. And I remember that week of being so stressed out. And you know who I called was my brothers because they are both big wrestlers and a huge part of that sport and just fighting sports in general. And Ryan, you could probably talk to this a little bit more than I can because I was never really in that realm. Is cutting weight and like getting down below a certain body weight. So I called them, I was like, hey, like I don't know what to do. And they're like, hey, like, start running in trash bags every single day, like drop all your water weight. And I remember my one brother told me to eat celery because it burns more calories than it gives you just through digestion. So that entire week, I think I ate nothing but celery sticks with hot sauce because there's 0 calories in hot sauce. And I was running in garbage bags for like an hour every single day. It was just absolutely insane. And then once I got in and I realized that taping was a thing, which is where they just they take a couple measurements to get an idea of your body fat percentage, which I will say is also not accurate because the reading that I get versus people who have the same number as me, technically, our body types are very different. And I'm not carrying the same actual body fat as some of the people that have the same number as I do, if that makes sense. But I sit at like 20 to 30 pounds above my maximum weight limit. But my physical ability is better than, pretty much anybody else. I mean, on our physical fitness test, I have a 592 score out of 600, which is super high, super hard to achieve. And I think that kind of speaks for itself, but it's just such a frustrating thing to then have to go get on that scale. And then everyone looks at you kind of like you're a dirtbag because you're overweight. But, it's just, I'm just put on muscle. That's it. So it's definitely hard, especially in that realm, to kind of play with that and exist in that realm and just trying to toe that line, I guess, and make sure that you're still in regulation. So, I mean, it's hard. And you know what else? This is coming from the Mosley article from 2009, but he points out that males tend to struggle more with body dysmorphia than females. And I think this has a lot to do with those societal standards that you talked about a little bit earlier, Ryan. And some of the ways that society and like social media, and like especially in the army, pushes out that ideal image of a man versus kind of, I think we've trended more towards giving women a little bit more leeway in body fat and body positivity. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about how that's affected you, is just the societal standards and all that.
Yeah. So I mean, it definitely plays a role because I see it as like very hypocritical. Not to bash specific people or like women, but if like you look at Victoria's Secret models, they've gotten bigger, and it just seems like society's okay with like women becoming bigger and like they kind of push for it, and it's an unhealthy lifestyle. But then, God forbid, you're a male who wants to look a specific type of way, but now you're scrutinized for it. And then it's just like, it's a double standard because they want males to look a certain way and you try and work for it. But then once you get that look, now you're scrutinized for it because now you're labeled as like toxic masculine, all because you want to look better for yourself. And it's very frustrating. And it just gets to the point where I've just completely blocked out like external factors, or like at least I try to, because the only opinion that really like matters is mine about myself.
Right. I think that's super important. And I think you could even see it in movies recently, is there's definitely a shift in, the female leads, and they have, different body types being presented as the female leads in these movies, like more plus size women, women with different backgrounds, different, body compositions. But I feel like typically the, main character male, or the, like the male like love interest, always has that same like super athletic, super built look that is just so hard to attain. And I'd also like to point out that I feel like so many of those men in Hollywood specifically are on performance enhancing drugs. And especially men on social media, it's the same. And they kind of push it at you and never really acknowledge that aspect of it either, which is so bad as well, because they're almost selling a lie. Like they're telling you, hey, like this is what I look like, this is how you could look, but not unless you were on like half of the stuff that they're on. You know what I'm saying? So I think
Yeah,
that's definitely a huge part of it. Um, and now I like to talk a little bit about how, like some coping and motivating with motivational uses, I should say, for body dysmorphia and body or muscle dysmorphia as well, and just your body image in general. And so Sam Sulek, who is a huge social media personality in the fitness world, he is super huge, but again, he's kind of chasing that bodybuilder's aesthetic. And he was saying that how he kind of copes with it is trying to stay down to earth and understanding that your body changes throughout the day, especially during lift. Like you're not going to look the same pumped up, perfect, appearance that you have when you're lifting as you will, a couple hours later after you've eaten. And a lot of those pictures that you see posted on social media are pictures taken when people are at like their apex, like their most optimal, when they look the absolute best. I know I run a gym page and I'm the same way. Like if I'm going to take pictures or post pictures, I always do it after a workout and after I get a pump going. And a lot of the times I will intentionally like do a couple of exercises for other muscle groups that I didn't even hit that day, just to get the pump going in my other muscles so that I look that much better. And just to kind of backtrack and explain what a pump is, when you're lifting and using those muscles, they swell up while you're at the gym and you look bigger than you would at your normal resting. So another person who discussed how he uses body dysmorphia is Chris Bumstead, who is the 5 time Mr. Olympia champion. He does struggle with body image from time to time. He's one of the social media influencers that he's both ends of the spectrum. He's like this super big personality in bodybuilding, and he's also a super big social media personality. And he's made that work for himself pretty amazingly. But he is someone that has spoken candidly about struggling with body image from time to time. And he says that he uses that to motivate him to be better and to keep building and keep pushing himself. So it's kind of, he says he uses it more as like a fueling point, which is kind of something that I discussed earlier. And, making sure that you're chasing that aesthetic, making sure that you are okay, like I think I look like this, but that just means I have to work this much harder. But which is can be good, but it could also lead to burnout. So it's definitely a double-edged sword, especially with that. I don't know if there's any things that you've used to cope or motivate yourself, especially in relation to that, if you would like to expand on that a little bit.
oh yeah. So uh, my old job was the honor guard for the Army. So I would go to funerals every day for veterans and give them a ceremony. And um, what really fueled me was I have to give back to those who gave all, and I have to like show the families that like the Army really cares, and we have to look a certain way and like look as professional as possible. So when I worked there, I would do 2 a days. So I'd work out before work and I'd work out after work, and I'd use like these veterans and these families as motivation to like continue on going, even like if I didn't want to, because I know a lot of those men and women suffered through a lot of things in war, and their families are in pain right now because their loved one is deceased. So the last thing I would want them to do was see somebody who looks super sloppy and doesn't look good in their dress uniform to show up and like not care. I wanted them to have a picture perfect image of what they thought a soldier should look like. And I think that standard just really set it. Oh, still there?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that really motivated me to be better. And in relation to that, it just helped me mentally like, okay, I'm doing this for a reason and I have a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then being on another deployment, what really helped me and still continues to help me is I have 11 other soldiers that I have to take care of. But how I see it is they need to have somebody to look up to and see somebody who's disciplined and looks like a soldier and has a strong mentality and knows a lot about like health and fitness. And it's my job to protect every single one of them and get them back to all their families. So in reality, it's not just 11 people, it's 11 people and all of the people who care about them, who rely on me. So I take that as fuel and motivation and put it into my workouts and see where I can be better for not only myself, but everybody else. And I think that's a better coping mechanism when it comes to that. And it just kind of shows like the true tenacity of like how soldiers really are and what they truly think. And it's more than just lifting, it's lifting with a purpose.
I think that's great. I know for me, especially being a female in the military, I think there's a different, not everybody looks at me with the same level of respect, especially I'm pretty short, like 5'1.5", right? Half inch is very important to me. But
Of course.
I'm not super big, like I'm not super, angry looking, scary, intimidating. But for me it's, a lot to do with making sure that I present myself in a way that shows that I am an effective soldier. Like I can do my job and I can do it well and I can do it better than my male peers. Especially, I mentioned earlier that I grew up hunting. It was kind of big in the hunting world too, because I get a lot of flack or like people kind of teasing me and saying like, oh, like, you can't, handle that, or you're gonna need like help dragging that one out and stuff like that. It's like, no, like I can handle it. I can do it myself. And um that self-sufficiency was something that always drove me. And I didn't ever want someone to look down on me or think less of me. And I wanted to make sure that I could back that up and I could rise to any occasion that I met with. Like I said, I grew up with brothers, and my father was super amazing growing up. He would always tell me like, you could do anything that these males can do and you can do it better. And you have to work hard. And that was something that I lived by, I still live by. And, I thought that really impacted me. And I was like, okay, like, yeah, I could do anything that anybody else can. I just got to work really freaking hard. So that's exactly what I did. I'm also a firefighter on the civilian side, and I definitely use that as fuel. That's when I really started, kicking it up in the gym, making sure that I was super effective, super strong, super physically fit. Fighting a fire is super intense. All right. It's not easy. There's a lot going on. You're carrying all this equipment, you're breathing on oxygen, lugging the hose. God forbid you find victims, you have to drag them out, make sure that, they get back to their families safe. Or I was on the firefighter rescue team as well. So that's the team that goes out if there's a firefighter that's trapped in a building. So you're already going into like the worst possible conditions. And you have to make sure that you know what you're doing. And on top of that, you could physically meet those requirements and you can drag that firefighter out so that he gets back to his family or she gets back to her family. And, the people that care about these people are going to get, the justice they deserve. And this person's going to, survive and hopefully be okay. So it was so important to me to be able to rise to the occasion and keep up physically with everything that I had to do and make sure that I was never the weakest link. That was always so important to me, is making sure that I was, effective at anything that I was trying to do. So on that note, I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to add or kind of close on.
No, I think I got it all out.
Okay. So I think that pretty much concludes what we had to say on, body dysmorphia, muscle dysmorphia, especially in bodybuilding and especially in males. It really does affect males a lot more than females. Like we had mentioned, I think social media definitely plays a lot into that. And I think as bodybuilding continues to, rise in popularity, especially with all these social media personalities, getting really big and famous now, I think we're going to see definitely a fluctuation in the amount of people who struggle with these body image issues. And, like chasing aesthetics is hard mentally and physically. So I think we're definitely going to see some sort of shift. And I guess we'll just have to wait and see how it plays out. But Ryan, thank you for joining me with this today, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Awesome, of course.